Not totally.
See,
You could ask me.
I keep losing. I keep calling back.
That's right. Yeah, I'm sorry we got cut off there.
You really hung up on me.
Hanging up is a good technique. If you don't know what to say, hang up and got a lot of time.
And call us head coach.
We call Jim. Get tougher, Jim.
Practical coaching tips.
So I think I just asked the question about where do you see your vows and all about it coming in, and how is that a factor even in the way you're thinking about 201, finishing 201, and these weekly coaching calls? That's fine. It's working. My anxiety just went.
You know, I can see, and as we walk through this, and it's amazing how you keep pulling me back to my vow, and you keep holding it up for me to see it. And I'll be honest with you, I don't like looking at it because of the shame and guilt, and I feel really, really bad right now. And but I can see how in my vow of not wanting to be wrong, that this is making me wrong. And I can see how by me getting out helps me to be okay and not to feel this way.
I want to thank you and applaud the courage to go ahead and face that and begin to even just wonder about how deep the impact is. And I can tell it doesn't feel good.
Mm-hmm.
But I have this sense, both from things that you've said and the fact that you showed up this week, knowing that you've missed 3 and life is hard, that you'd like to break the power of both the vows and the autopilot. Mm-hmm. This is still the integrity conversation. You gave your word not only to show up, but to play full out. You gave your word to be present, both for the seminars and for these coaching calls. And I hear you saying you want to do it. I want to ask another question. What can I do to be in your corner enough, not to have you just fulfill the letter of the law to be present at seminars and coaching calls? What can I do to be in your corner enough that you take the chance that doing things differently through the rest of 201 might actually be the key for breaking through the power of those other things that they have?
So what can you do? Is over here?
Yeah, I'm asking, what can I do to be in your corner enough that you'll continue to do what you said you'd do, even in the midst of pressures and demands and the temptation to give up?
I think the only thing that we do is really continue to hold me accountable and pray for me, encourage me. Keep holding up a mirror even though I look at myself sometimes. Yeah.
I'll give you my word. I'll do that. And
Can you call me through the week?
I was just going to say, I don't want to take lightly in any way how much pressure you feel and how tired you may be with all these extra demands at work. I'll call you during the week. I'll pray for you during the week. And should you miss, I realize that it's your responsibility to call and to show up. But I'm going to pursue you. Because I'm convinced you want to get on the other side of it. You willing to let me do that?
Can you do it before I go to work at 5:30 in the morning?
I can. And I will. If that's what it takes, I can and I will. And if we need to reschedule these coaching calls, I'll just remind you, all you got to do is let me know when it looks like this is not going to be possible for you, and I'll work with you to reschedule it and make sure that we do it. And Ferdinand here will do the same thing. But we're committed to you experiencing transformation, not just course completion.
Even if I go ahead and quit?
Yeah, you know what, Chris? I'm not going to let you quit. Now, you may choose to, but I'm not going to let you. I'm convinced that you want to get on the other side. And by your invitation to keep holding up the mirror, I'm going to stand with you. That's why I asked you, will you let me do it?
Thanks, Steve.
Yeah, welcome. So, how far do you want us to go? So, here's what I want to ask you. In spite of the feelings of shame, tell me what you did do this week in terms of realizing that you had missed 3 and that represents an integrity gap. How did you approach that in addition to feeling some shame?
I went ahead and didn't even read up on it just a little bit. I did my homework.
Whatever. Or just the fact that you know that you're right there on the verge of not doing what you said you did.
It's easier for me just to go ahead and pull out. And so I haven't done really anything at all. I haven't pressed into anything. I didn't even pick up my book, because when I pick up the book, I feel, not just this week where I'm at, but even the other weeks where I haven't even pressed into it. And
so that's an integrity gap.
Yeah.
And just based on what you remember, not looking at notes, what do you remember that we encourage you to do as ways to close those gaps?
Well, I know one thing is I need to make it right by coming and cleaning up my mess. And so, I confess to you right now that I have not kept my word in doing my homework. And I want to clean that up by saying I will give my word to going back and starting anew from this point on to going back and doing this week. I don't know if I'm ready to give my word for the other ones I've missed, because I just don't have enough time to do that.
So, so as you say that, what do you hear yourself saying?
I'll fall short again.
Okay. So I don't want to take a risk of messing up again and feeling worse again, so I just don't want to promise. So what if it was possible that making a new promise to do what you didn't do, that actually accomplishing those things would have the exact opposite impact on you? Instead of feeling worse about yourself, you'd feel pretty thrilled about yourself.
I can see that. I can see how that would be.
So I want to ask you to take a chance. To take on, even in the midst of some cynicism or personal history that says it's not likely that I'll be able to do what I'm about to say and do. I want to ask you to take it on again, that part of cleaning up the mess is not only acknowledging and being really honest about where you think you're weak, but going ahead and promising, and I would suggest promising in a time frame that doesn't add undue burden, but still keeps out there promising to do what you said you do, so that you can experience what God has for you in breaking the power.
Okay. Good. Thank you. Thank you, Steve. Marks, what else did you observe as the conversation continued?
So I don't think, and this is kind of a hard call, but I don't think I would have agreed, because to me what Chris was doing was trying to create obstacles that Steve wouldn't agree to give himself an out.
So what would you not have agreed to?
Well, I don't think I've agreed to do all that stuff because, but I'm just saying, I wonder about it because that seemed to me a little bit like enabling. And I think I might have said something like, you know, because you're a super responsible guy, you provide for your family, and I know you can do that without needing me to do this. But I don't know that I would have agreed to do that. I mean, I get that. Being a stand for him, and I mean, I get that part. And I'm not saying it's that clear, but that seemed a little bit like enabling him a little bit, not requiring him to be responsible for his things he has to be responsible for.
It's kind of fine line between what does it look like to support somebody, and what does it look like then to take on their stuff.
And I'm thinking, man, I was, this is our different personalities, but I was thinking, man, that would feel so good that somebody's really going to stick with you. I mean, that's what I'm thinking.
And so for you coaches in training, one of the things that's on display here is that this is an art, not a science.
Yeah.
And because Steve did it the particular way he did it, doesn't make it right or wrong. It just puts the art on display. And two coaches could do it very differently, and both of them get the result that we're after. Margaret, you wanted to?
I mean, this might sound really strange, but it almost sounded to me in the whole interaction that Chris wanted Steve to say, okay, well, let's just, and Steve wouldn't do it. It's almost like if you want out, you've got to take responsibility to say I want out, but I'm not going to say it for you. And so as long as you keep pressing this way, I'm going to keep leaving the door open. In or out, it's your responsibility.
Good.
I thought actually verbalizing that, actually saying, I'm not going to let you quit.
You can take
You can take
responsibility.
responsibility, you can choose to quit, but I'm not going to let you. I thought that's pretty.
Yeah, I thought that what I might have done in that situation is hold up to him, okay, Chris, what is it going to feel like when you quit? As opposed to what would it feel like if you press through this and finished?
That's a great response. What else did you observe?
Well, I was in line with Todd there because I'm thinking, what if the coach can't do what he's going to ask him to do? What can I do to support you through this? I'm thinking, well, what if what he asks is just completely impossible or just beyond, something I could really do?
And that may be.
And then the other thing is how responsible am I really for this person's progress? I mean, to what point am I then being responsible for that person's responsibility?
What's the answer to that question, Tricia? How responsible am I?
Is there a short answer to that question? I am responsible for everything that belongs to me, and I'm not responsible for what doesn't belong to me, in the sense that I'm not.
Because we've had this conversation before too, you and I.
Well, that's true. What did I say then?
You said,
What she said then is the right answer.
she told me, don't own what isn't yours to own.
Right.
Only own what belongs to you.
Right.
So,
Yeah. And at the same time, we do have a value in faith walking that
Yes.
nobody wins unless everybody wins.
absolutely.
But it's not the same kind of responsibility maybe that the world would see, that we walk with people further than that, but not by owning their stuff, by walking along beside them. I mean, as a therapist, one thing they tell us when we're little baby therapists is, you never work harder than your client. And that's true. At the same time, that doesn't mean detach and just watch them drown.
Yes.
And that's part of the art.
See, I had a coach that was considering whether she was going to finish it or not. I wouldn't tell her what to do, but I told her she needed to take time to pray for it about it, and that I would be praying for her in that process. And then the next meeting we had, she said some things that indicated that she really wanted to pursue it, but she wasn't feeling like she could. So I told her, I said, then you know what? This is what I hear from you. So I think you should go ahead and do it because that's what you're saying. And she agreed, and she did finish through. It was tough.
One of the things that I do
So I'm like,
is I, in that context, attempt to turn it back to the integrity conversation.
mhm.
And sometimes I just have to kind of pull back, take a deep breath, and say, I don't know about all that. So let me tell you what's going on in my head. What's going on in my head is that what we're dealing with here is that you gave your word to something that you're struggling to keep your word.
Mhm.
And so tell me what you get present to about struggling to keep your word. And what that does is it takes the conversation away from me trying to fix things. It puts it back into their court where they begin to talk about their stuff. And that's frequently a fallback for me. When I get lost in the conversation, I'm not sure what's my responsibility, what's their responsibility. Ultimately, I don't have to figure that out.
What I would add to that is also, I mean, not in the call, obviously, because this is my stuff, but maybe with my head coach or just in my own mind. What we tend to do is say to ourselves, well, as a coach, I gave my word to a process with this person, but that if they don't keep their word, then I don't have to keep my word. And, we do that in a lot of places, in marriage. It's real easy for us to say, well, you didn't do what you said. You don't love, honor, cherish, so I don't have to love, honor, cherish. And actually, I think we should be real careful if the other person is not keeping their word in the relationship to hold the mirror up to ourselves. Am I keeping my word in this relationship?
Maybe you observe something.
We have to be careful that we, I'm a tough guy, and I sometimes do things, maybe I shoot from the hip, and I regret some of those things, but I also, on the other side, I want to fix everything. I want to fix everybody. And I just thought one of Steve's comments, Chris asked him, well, would you come with me every morning before 5:30, talk to me on the phone? And Steve said yes. I don't, sometimes we can overcommit trying to help everybody and fix everybody.
It's true. And what I would say, I don't hear you say every morning, I've heard you say once a week.
Yeah.
But that's not a commitment I would make, because I'm not very lucid at 5:30. but I wouldn't say that's a bad commitment to make if it's a commitment Steve's willing to make.
And that would really impress Chris. If Chris is getting up every morning to go to work at 5:30 and Steve's going to be with him, not every morning, again, once a week.
And here's the way that I heard that. I really appreciate the conversation over here. I heard that, okay, you're saying that you're going to be in my corner. What could you do? 5:30, could you call me during the week at 5:30? And I felt like I could do that and say it with integrity without. That's a good question, though, about what is enabling. Am I working harder than he's working? But
I did a coaching call this past week with Bob and Tanya and Judy. And one of the things that we got that came up on the radar screen for us was that it's really easy in a conversation with somebody coaching to get fused. To get like, it's more important for you to like me than it is for me to do the right thing. And I'm not saying that's what's going on here. I'm not saying that's what's going on when Steve said he'd call him at 5:30 in the morning, but I think one of the things that I have to look at for myself is, am I saying I'll do this, am I committing to this because how you think about me matters more than doing the right thing? And again, there's no science to that. There's no checklist.
One way Steve could have gotten fused and didn't early on is that, Chris, you could have said, I'm really busy at work and I just can't do this. And Steve could have said, well, what time of the day do you set aside for this? Well, how many hours a day are you working? And how much time do you feel like you need for your family? Well, I tell you what, let's, and start solving your problem for you. And focusing on the logistics of that rather than focusing on the integrity conversation.
I would say this right here has been very difficult. My last coaching trial that I had, one of the guys I've been in deep relationship with for the last 6 or 7 years. And I felt it's been very difficult at times. I wanted to let him off the hook. Like, for instance, a while ago when we were talking, And I said, you know, I want to start anew from this point on. You know, for me, I would have said, hey, that's great. You know, like you always hear, well, I know you haven't had your quiet time in the last, you know, 21 days. Well, you know, let's start afresh now and hit it every day. I would want to, and I would thought that's what you were going to do for me. And say, well, that's great. You're making a new commitment. You know, you're giving your word to come back, but you didn't let me off the hook. You said, okay, but what about the rest? You know, so I thought we were going to wind up shutting it down. It's like, whoa, I had to rethink about that. Because that's something I would probably let somebody off the hook.
Okay, so pay attention here to yourself. What we're saying to you, and I want to make the message really loud and clear, holding up a mirror to people when there's an integrity gap in our coaching agreement. There's an agreement. Chris has an agreement, some things that he said he would do. And we believe that the coaching skill of holding up a mirror when somebody doesn't do what they said they would do is a critical skill. It's an essential skill. It is one that has to be mastered. It takes a lot of practice to master. I want us to take about 60 seconds and let you just go internal for a minute. And so what are you drawing to yourself about how you're going to improve your coaching, what you've got to take on, what maybe this has helped you to see that you haven't seen before. See what you get credit to and all of that.